So with my guest today, I've been thinking about the ties that bind and define us, the sort of relationships of family and friendship that sustain us. Now, sometimes, when I was a kid, perhaps just after my older brother Fergal had given me a dead leg, or maybe my younger sister Claire had reached over and taken the last meringue with her big innocent eyes that might have fooled the easily manipulated babysitter, but didn't fool me for 1 second, I would look sort of wistfully at the one kid in class who was an only child, and I would think he was so lucky. Even if at the time people always would drop their voices when they would say only child, in the same way that my grandmother would say someone was German, implying that they didn't want to embarrass them by saying it out loud because it wasn't really their fault, but it was still something that we didn't approve of. But I didn't be the only child for very long, because even then I knew that my siblings, as annoying as they could be at times, were on balance a good thing. And that was for reasons big and small. Now the bigger ones, I become more aware of as I grow older. Like a spouse, your siblings are there in sickness and in health, in crisis and good times. Your resources are pooled, responsibilities shared. And they understand where you come from. There's nothing to hide or to explain. They've seen you at your best and your worst. They've seen you naked in the bath, because they were naked in the bath with you. But there's smaller stuff, too, that I appreciate. For example, they give me glimpses into other worlds. My siblings all do really very different things, and they live in very different worlds to mine. Most of them are the kind of people that if we weren't siblings, it's unlikely that I would know them. We live in different places, we have different jobs, we have different social lives, different interests. It's unlikely we'd ever meet, and if we did, it would be once in passing and not the kind of regular meetings upon which friendships are built. My siblings aren't like my friends, and that's a good thing. My sister Edel, for example, she's a carer. She's been a carer for, well, as long as I can remember, since we were teenagers, when she volunteered at a local care home. She's spent her whole life looking after other people who often aren't easy to look after, and sometimes people who need the kind of care that seems to me overwhelming. But Edel is never overwhelmed. She'll shrug and laugh and roll up her sleeves and clean up old Tommy where he needs to be cleaned up, or gently and patiently explain again to Tommy why he can't really do that in front of other people in the living room during X Factor, and if he really needs to do that, his own room is the place for that. It's the kind of job that I doubt I'd even be aware that people did if it weren't for my sister. I shamefully think I couldn't do it. And yet, someone has to do it. Someone like my amazing sister. And it's only because she's my sister that I appreciate that there are amazing people out there in the world who look after people who need looking after in ways that I would be overwhelmed by. And it's good for me to know that. It humbles me. And my siblings have also passed things on to me. And I don't just mean the hand-me-down coats and tennis rackets and school books and chicken pox that I would take with an ungrateful put-upon look before huffing off to school, convinced I would have been better off in the orphanage with Oliver Twist, because at least his gruel was his own and not a hand-me-down gruel, where his sister had already written in all the answers in blue biro. My sister Orvine, she gave me Paul Simon and Fleetwood Mac and Olivia Newton-John and Saturday Night Fever and Mary Coughlan. And David Cassidy, but we don't need to dwell on David Cassidy. My brother Fergal, he gave me Queen and U2. He took me to my very first concert, U2 in Croke Park, 1985. Edel gave me, oddly, Gilbert and Sullivan and South Pacific and My Grandma Told Your Grandma Sitting by the Fire. My grandma told your grandma, I'm going to set this world on fire. Talk about my sister Claire. Well, I gave her Michael Jackson, for which I'm sure she's very grateful. She ought to be. Shut up. Now, I'm not sure which one of them gave me Helen Reddy, or Gilbert Sullivan, or Donna Summer, or AC/DC, or Mary Black, but one of them did. My siblings gave me the soundtrack to my life, which might seem like a small thing, but it's not. Every life needs a soundtrack, a score to accompany it with. Without the Bee Gees, John Travolta strutting down a Brooklyn street in his Cuban heels and checking his hair out in a shop window would, frankly, have been a big idiot. But with them, he was a star. You'll notice I didn't mention my oldest brother, Lorcan, because he didn't give me any music. He'd already left home anyway, and to be honest, he was a total nerd. But he did give me sushi, long before anyone else had ever heard of sushi. So in this way, in his own way, he did come through eventually. And much later, he gave me a great piece of musical advice, which I'm now going to impart to you. Irish people, we all know Patricia the stripper. It's part of our modern Irish DNA. Even if you don't think you know the words, you actually do know the words. And regardless how you feel about the rest of Christa Berg's oeuvre, you cannot tell me that Patricia the stripper isn't one of the most fun story songs ever written. And it's important that it's a story song because with a story song, you don't need to be a great singer. You don't need to be a great singer to sell it. It pretty much sells itself. And do you know something else about Patricia the stripper? It's our secret. I mean, literally, it's an Irish secret. Nobody else knows that song. It's only an Irish thing. So here is the great thing I'm telling you. Let's assume that, unlike most of my guests today, you're not actually a good singer. And you can never remember poems, and you've got 2 left feet. And one day you find yourself at a party abroad. Drinks have been taken, and songs are being sung, and the next thing, to your horror, they're all looking at you. And worse, they're all looking at you expectantly, because, well, you're Irish, aren't you? And everyone knows that every Irish person is great for the house singing and partying. And they know that because, well, that's what we've been telling them for years, and they bought it. And now they're all looking at you, and you are thinking, oh, shite. Well, you don't have to, because you got this. Stand up. Tell them that Dennis was a menace with his anyone for tennis and beseeching them to come and keep the score. And these people have never heard that. They don't know about Dennis or Maud being so bored, or that you're going out to dinner with the gorgeous singer, and they certainly do not know what else Patricia does for a living, or that she's going to soon end up in court and have a very lucky escape because she was in her working clothes. It's all new to them. And by the time they find out about Patricia's sexy part-time job and are relieved to hear the judge bang on the table and declare, "Case dismissed," you are going to be hailed as an all-conquering party piece hero. You're welcome.